As we stood on the balcony of this luxury villa in Beverly Hills, I felt how perfect everything seemed. With the sun streaming down on our manicured gardens and the view of the city in the distance, it seemed that everything was so well organized. My wife Amelia and I have spent many wonderful days here together, and the success and happiness that this place symbolizes is exactly the kind of life that many people dream of. Steve, honestly, have you ever thought about being able to live in a place like this every day? Amelia asked softly. Her voice was gentle, as if she carried some kind of unspoken dream and nostalgia. Never thought about it, but now we do. I turned to look at her, her beautiful face reflected in the sunlight, always with an inviting smile. Our story began so purely in a time of passion and dreams. We met at an art exhibition on the university campus. Amelia was a promising artist and I was a young man with high aspirations. We met at first sight, talked about art and the future, and gradually came together. Thinking back to those youthful days, the watery years flowed between each other, and our feelings deepened. We often sneak into the campus art building in the middle of the night, painting and sculpting as we please, letting the wind blow into the open windows, bringing the coolness of the night. Will you paint with me for the rest of my life? She once asked me that. Of course, it's our dream, I replied with conviction. However, marriage and real life gradually changed us. After graduation, I chose to join a well-known advertising agency as a creative director, and we worked hard while building wealth for our future together. And as part of our family, Amelia gave up pursuing an artistic career to devote herself to our home as a full-time homemaker. She kept our mansion well organized and was active in the social life of the wealthy neighborhood. But the loneliness and lack of self-worth behind this life of luxury gradually eroded her, leaving her deeply lost in the splendor of nothingness. As the days passed, I began to notice a change in Amelia. She became more reticent and lost her passion and interest in life. She often wandered into our mansion, and although she painted many highly acclaimed works, they no longer showed the same inspiration and vitality that she once had. Steve, I think I'm running out of inspiration, she said to me. I saw a certain long-lost gleam in her eyes, a longing for art and a yearning for freedom. I understand how she feels, but I don't know how to change that. I love her dearly, but I am also aware that our lives have changed dramatically. The collision of what was once a dream and reality has filled my mind with endless contradictions. I was on my way home one night when I suddenly realized that I might have gotten used to this seemingly perfect but fractured life. I didn't know if this was the future I wanted, but I knew that I had to do something to undo it. This is the beginning of our story. Behind the seemingly perfect mask, dark waves are silently crashing over everything that is good about us. We have some valuable pieces of art hanging on the living room wall of our house. Most of them are works by well-known contemporary artists. These paintings are not from my personal collection, but from Amelia's taste. She always captures the essence of each painting, and the colors and lines that flow across the canvas seem to be part of her inner world. One evening, while we were enjoying dinner at the table, Amelia suddenly made a suggestion that surprised me. Steve, I'm thinking about restarting my art career. I put down the knife and fork in my hand and looked her in the eye. Starting over? Are you serious? Yes, I've given it some serious thought. I can't go on like this. Every day is so dull and boring, as if it's lost its meaning. I want to rediscover my passion. There was a hint of determination in her words that I hadn't seen in a long time. But that means you'll have more time away from your family, will we? We have enough time together? I tried to hide my inner turmoil, but the worry was still evident in my words. Steve, I'm not trying to leave you. I just want to get back to the part of me that belongs. Amelia sighed as she reached for my hand. We can face these changes together, can't we? I nodded, and although there was still a hint of hesitation in my mind, I couldn't bear to deny her desire. After all, she had given so much to this family, and now it was time for her to rekindle her dreams. From that day on, Amelia began to appear frequently in major art exhibitions and creative salons, and her passion seemed to be rekindled. I felt relieved, but at the same time, I felt an inexplicable uneasiness. Her life gradually became more fulfilling. While I continued to be busy at the advertising agency, working hard on one advertisement after another. One night, I worked late and came home. Pushing open the door, the whole house was silent. Amelia wasn't there. She had gone to a party for the art world. I walked into the living room, intending to take a short break there. As I sat down on the couch, I inadvertently glanced at a picture book on the coffee table that Amelia had been looking at lately. I flipped through the album and found a business card stuck in it. The business card bore a name: Ethan Kane, a well-known young artist. I can't help but feel curious about who Ethan is. And what is his relationship with Amelia? Although slightly uneasy inside, I chose to trust her. The phone number and address on the business card made me decide not to think about it anymore. This night, I tossed and turned on the couch. All those wonderful memories of the past and all the changes of the present intertwined in my mind, and I tried to convince myself that it was all for the better. After all, Amelia was just trying to get her passion back, and I, on the other hand, wanted to find our balance in this change. A few days later, I finally got a chance to meet Ethan. It was a gallery opening and Amelia invited me along. We were dressed formally, and they said it was a night to look forward to. As we stepped into the gallery, there was already a crowd gathered around us, the cream of the Los Angeles art world. I was feeling a little constrained, but Amelia appeared at ease as she warmly greeted each acquaintance and introduced me to their work. "Steve, this is Ethan Kane, the star of the evening." Amelia introduced me to a young artist. Ethan looked to be about 30 years old, with a great instrument and a twinkle of intelligence and enthusiasm in his eyes. He extended his hand gently. "Nice to meet you, Steve." "Hello, Ethan. Your work is excellent." I responded politely, while taking a quick look at him. His hands were steady and strong. It was a confident and charismatic man. "Thank you. I'm very honored that your wife has complimented me on my work," Ethan said. Looking over at Amelia, something flickered in his eyes. Amelia responded with a smile, while I felt some strange tension inside me. Maybe it's just me being paranoid, but ever since I found Ethan's business card that night, I've been sensitive to their relationship. Throughout the evening, Ethan paid undivided attention to every guest. His demeanor was decent, his words were funny, and he seemed to be very enthusiastic about everyone and everything. This made me feel some good feelings towards him, but at the same time, I also felt a vague uneasiness, as if there were some unknown secrets hidden underneath the glamorous surface. When I got home, I still couldn't calm down. What kind of person was Ethan really? How attractive is he to Amelia? I don't know. I can only hope that all this won't affect our married life. Amelia's happiness is the most important thing to me. However, I am also vaguely aware that an invisible storm is approaching, and I must be prepared for all the changes and challenges that may lie ahead. Every night for the first month, Amelia enthusiastically told me about her new insights and achievements in the art world. She had a renewed sparkle in her eyes, as if she had recovered the dreamy and passionate person she was back then. This made me feel relieved and a little guilty, because she had sacrificed so much and only now had she regained that dream of her own. However, as time went on, I began to feel some uneasy changes. Amelia became busier and busier, and even sometimes we couldn't even have dinner together. Our interactions became less frequent and were replaced by her long interactions with Ethan. I was home alone one night. The clock on the wall rang 9 times, and I looked at the empty dining room table. Once upon a time, our life was so cozy, but now it seemed so cold. Just as I was contemplating, the doorbell rang, and I got up in a hurry to open the door. Amelia pushed her way in, a tired but contented smile on her face. "How was your day?" I asked her, trying to hide the loss inside. "It was great." Ethan gave us a tour of his studio. His creative process is amazing. There was a glint of excitement in her eyes that I hadn't seen in a long time. "Yeah? Sounds like fun." I tried to squeeze out a small smile. "Steve, you should come and experience it. It's a whole new artistic sensation," Amelia said eagerly. "I will when I get the chance." I reluctantly agreed. Much of our conversation the night afterward centered around Ethan and his artistry. I noticed that Amelia had an unspeakable admiration for him, which caused an inexplicable jealousy to grow in me. But I did my best to restrain myself, telling myself that this was her process of reclaiming her dreams and that I shouldn't interfere with her freedom. As Amelia became more active in the art world, her relationship with Ethan grew closer. They often went out together to participate in various art activities, while I could seldom accompany her because of my busy schedule. Gradually, a feeling of uneasiness and doubt began to grow in my heart. One evening, after a long day of work, I dragged my tired body back home. When I pushed open the door, the house was silent. Amelia still hadn't come back. I sat on the couch idly flipping through TV programs, distracted. After a few minutes, I decided to give her a call, but the phone still went unanswered after a long ring on the other end. It was a sleepless night on the couch. Countless thoughts rolled through my mind, memories of the past intertwined with the reality of the present. I tried to convince myself that this was just a temporary hustle and everything would be fine. But deep inside, the restlessness was like a dark surge that could never be quelled. The next day, the sun poured in through the curtains and I opened my tired eyes. Just as I was about to get up, the door to my room was pushed open and Amelia walked in. "Steve, I'm sorry it was so late last night. I didn't want to wake you," she said with an apologetic look. "It's okay. You look tired today." I forced a smile. "Yes, the preparations for the art show have been so tedious lately." She sat down wearily on the couch and rubbed her temples. I nodded, still unable to quell the uneasiness in my mind. "Amelia, can we talk?" "Sure, Steve. What can I do for you?" She looked at me quizzically. "You've been getting close to Ethan lately, and it's got me a little worried," I said bluntly. Amelia looked a little surprised, but then smiled. "Steve, you don't have to worry about that. Ethan is just my art partner. There's nothing wrong with us." I believed her words, but the doubts in my mind still couldn't be completely removed. I took a deep breath and decided to put those doubts aside for now and trust her again. "Well, I'm just a bit paranoid. I wish we could spend more time together, like we used to." "I hope so too, Steve," Amelia said as she took my hand in hers, her gaze sincere and tender. This night, we felt some long-lost closeness again, but that uneasiness remained hidden in the back of my mind. Perhaps the future would prove that it was all just more than I bargained for, but my instincts told me that it wasn't that simple. A few days later, I received a strange call from a low voice on the other end of the line. "Steve, there's something I want to talk to you about, Ethan." "Who are you?" I asked alertly. "I'm a former coworker and friend of his. Ethan isn't as simple as he acts. We need to meet and talk." The other man looked serious. The other party did not reveal too many details, but aroused my great interest and alertness. We then arranged to meet at a secluded cafe, where face-to-face interaction is always more authentic. Upon arriving at the cafe, a familiar figure waited in the corner. His eyes twinkled and his face was permeated with complex emotions. "Steve, thanks for meeting me," he spoke. "Who are you? What the hell happened?" I asked impatiently. "I'm John and a former coworker of Ethan's," John said in a hushed voice. "There's something you might want to know about Ethan's true identity and purpose." I immediately felt a chill down my back and had a feeling that a bigger conspiracy was about to surface. I tried my best to stay calm, but I couldn't ignore the shock and fear I felt inside. At this moment, I realized that Amelia and I had been drawn into a dangerous game, and that Ethan's true nature would change our lives forever. As John recounts the story, I come to understand the secret behind Ethan and his true purpose in approaching Amelia. This long-planned conspiracy leaves me deeply disturbed, and I must act quickly to protect our faltering family. I couldn't sleep this night with only one thought in my mind. I had to uncover the truth, stop Ethan's plan, and guard the future that belongs to us. From then on, I felt like I was walking a tightrope every moment, and John's words always echoed in my mind that I had to find more evidence to prove Ethan's true identity. I realized that I couldn't do anything rash. It would only alert the police. One night, I decided to explore Ethan's studio while Amelia was out, in a building in the center of town that was already deserted at night. I snuck in and used the low light to find a uniquely decorated room. The room was filled with all sorts of avant-garde artwork, and a pang of annoyance went through me. The style of the artwork made me uneasy. I began to search carefully, hoping to find a hint of what was going on. Suddenly, a drawer caught my attention. I pulled open the drawer, and there were some documents and photos inside. The content of the photos surprised me. It was a photo of Ethan and some strangers, and those people didn't look like people in the art circle. Instead, they looked more like people from some dark organizations. There were also some transaction records and plans in the file, and while I didn't fully understand the details of them, I knew they were anything but unusual. My heart raced, and the scene before me began to blur. Just then, the door to the room rattled slightly, and I hastily closed the drawer and quickly ducked into a dark corner to one side. Ethan pushed his way in, looking in a good mood and humming a little tune. I held my breath, not daring to make any noise. Ethan walked over to the desk and casually flipped through some papers before dialing a phone number. A low voice came from the other end of the line. "Is everything ready?" "Yes, as planned." Ethan replied simply. Every word he said made my heart clench. I moved quietly, trying to hear the conversation he was having with the other person. It wasn't long before Ethan hung up and walked to the other room. I took the opportunity to leave the studio softly, my mind filled with mixed emotions. When I got home, I felt unusually tired. I began to organize my thoughts and tie Ethan's machinations together into a complete story. Ethan's approach to Amelia wasn't just about dreams of art. His real agenda seemed to be related to some kind of profit, and that profit might even involve a larger, more dangerous plan. This night, I've been thinking about what to do about all this. I can't act rashly. That might put us in greater danger. But I can't just sit back and wait, either. I have to find the right moment to reveal Ethan's true colors. A few days later, I decided to take action. I asked John to meet me and told him what I had found in Ethan's studio, and John, equally shocked, suggested that we gather more evidence and expose Ethan's plot in one fell swoop. During that time, I became extra cautious. Whenever Amelia was out with Ethan, I would try to find an opportunity to follow and observe their movements. I tried not to let Amelia notice my unusual behavior. After all, she didn't know anything about it yet. One day after dinner, Amelia told me that she and Ethan were going to an art show, while I excused myself from her by working late and continuing to hold back my anger. As the end of dinner drew near, the car I found myself in parked close to the back door of the exhibit hall, with almost no one outside. I hid in the car, watching the exit with binoculars, waiting for them to appear. Finally, Ethan and Amelia walked out of the exhibit hall arm in arm, and they looked happy. They walked into the cafe across the street together, looking like they were going to take a short break. The cafe was small and didn't have many customers, which gave me a chance to get closer to them. I tried to keep a low profile and moved closer to the table where they were sitting. I could hear their conversation through the thin wooden walls. They talked mostly about art and Amelia's work, but Ethan's words always carried a veiled hint, a red flag I couldn't ignore. Shortly afterward, I decided to act more directly for once. Through John's informant, I learned that Ethan had a secret deal with an organization, and that this deal would take place in a hidden location. I knew that this might be my best chance to uncover the truth. Following the information John gave me, I dressed in ordinary clothes and prepared to sneak into that location. As the night grew darker and the number of pedestrians on the street gradually decreased, my heartbeat gradually accelerated along with it. This action would be my last desperate attempt. When I arrived at the trading site, there was silence all around me. I sneak in quietly, and by the faint light, I can see several figures engaged in some sort of negotiation. I hid in a corner, trying not to make any noise. Ethan's voice came out, "This transaction must be completed within the allotted time, or the plan will fail. Don't worry, everything is going according to plan. But you have to make sure there are no surprises." The other party's voice was cold, without a trace of emotion. Of course, none of us are allowed to make any mistakes in this matter. Ethan continued. I clenched my fists, finally recognizing Ethan's true purpose and his sinister plan. However, I couldn't act rashly yet. This deal must involve a great deal, and if I reveal my identity now, the consequences will be unimaginable. I continued to wait quietly, listening to their conversation, trying to gain more information. At this moment, I understood the danger I was facing and what I had to do. This night, I left the trading site with vital evidence in my hands. I knew that there was no turning back the tide. I had to take action to protect Amelia and expose Ethan's plot. When I returned home, exhausted, Amelia had fallen asleep, her serene face giving me a sense of compassion and endless protectiveness. Though she remained ignorant of the truth of what had happened, I knew that our lives could never return to their former peace. I had organized all the evidence I had gathered and was ready to confess everything to Amelia. I knew it would be a difficult conversation, but it was the only way to protect her and our family. The next morning, sunlight poured through the curtains in the room. I sat at the dining room table and watched Amelia bring in breakfast. She smiled as she sat down, but I knew that this breakfast would change everything for us. Amelia, we need to talk. I took a deep breath and started this conversation. She looked at me quizzically. Steve, what happened? I took out all the evidence and showed it to her one by one, telling her about Ethan's true identity and his plans. As I went on, Amelia's face grew pale and she couldn't believe what she was hearing. It's impossible. How could Ethan? She shuddered. I know it's hard to accept, but it's the truth. He used you just to fulfill his plot. I take her hand and try to give her strength. Steve, I don't know what to do. Her eyes were filled with tears, and her whole body looked helpless and confused. Don't worry, we'll face this together. I look at her fondly and try to give her confidence. We will expose his schemes and protect the love between us. At that moment, I felt as if the distance between us had been shortened. Although the road ahead is still full of thorns, our determination to face it together will enable us to overcome all difficulties. This is our promise to face all challenges together and to guard our future together. There is a storm coming, but I believe that if we stand firm in our faith, we will be able to weather this darkness and see the light again. After that truthful conversation, Amelia began to become silent and anxious. It was as if an invisible blow had been dealt to our relationship, and the cracks gradually appeared. Confusion and pain often showed in her eyes, while I was deep in guilt and self-blame for these changes. One day, Amelia looked unusually tired. She was sitting on the couch in the living room, looking up at the ceiling as if she was thinking about something profound. I walked over to her and gently held her hand. Amelia, I know this is all hard for you, but we have to get through this together. I said gently. Steve, I really don't know what to do. Her voice was low, full of helplessness and confusion. We still have time to fight back. It's not over yet. I responded firmly, trying to cheer her up. However, she only nodded gently, the sadness on her face not diminishing. Our relationship was being tested, and the future was becoming so uncertain. Ethan seemed to sense the change between us, and he began to actively distance himself from us, which in turn deepened my suspicions and alarm. I knew he wouldn't give up his plans easily, and we had to be prepared ahead of time. Amelia and I were dining together one evening when suddenly her phone rang. It was an incoming call from Ethan. She glanced at the screen of her cell phone and frowned, then picked it up. Ethan, well, I'll see you tomorrow. She responded briefly and hung up. He has something for you again? I couldn't help but ask. He said there was an important art conference he wanted me to attend. Amelia explained, a hint of hesitation in her voice. I took a deep breath and decided that this time I wasn't going to sit around and wait. Amelia, I'll go with you. She looked a little surprised, but then nodded. Well, maybe that would be safer too. The next day, we traveled together to the so-called art conference. The venue was in a luxury hotel in the center of the city, surrounded by people and hustle and bustle. Upon entering the conference room, I immediately felt a certain sense of oppression. Ethan stood not far away, his gaze always locked on Amelia, as if he was trying to read everything about her. He looked a little startled to see us together, but quickly regained his composure. Amelia, glad you could make it, Ethan said with a smile, and then looked over at me. Steve, it's great that you're here today too. Yes, I feel the need to learn more about the program Amelia is involved in. I responded with feigned relief, while keeping my mind on high alert. As the meeting began, Ethan presented some new works and projects to the group, while I watched in silence. Amelia seemed a little distracted, her eyes darting from time to time, as if she was avoiding Ethan's gaze. Suddenly, I felt a pair of eyes staring at me from behind. I turned my head to see a man in a black suit coldly observing us. My heart tightened, and I realized that I and Amelia might have been under surveillance. After the meeting, Ethan invited us to his studio to continue the conversation. I didn't want to go, but agreed so as not to arouse suspicion. Amelia looked a little nervous, but we shook each other's hands and encouraged each other. Entering the studio, Ethan welcomed us into a beautifully appointed showroom with walls filled with his latest works. He rambled on about his inspirations and future plans, while I kept trying to find the cracks in his words. "Steve, what do you think of these pieces?" Ethan asked, suddenly turning to me with a probing and testing gaze. "Very creative and profound," I replied reluctantly, my mind more alert. At that moment, Ethan approached Amelia and said softly, "Amelia, this is a special piece of artwork, and I'd like to hear what you think of it." He points to a painting hanging in the corner. Amelia approached the painting, her eyes wandering over the canvas for a moment, when suddenly, her face changed abruptly. The painting disturbingly presented a scene full of innuendo, as if it were subtly expressing some kind of threat. "Ethan, what does the painting mean?" she asked with forced composure, a tremor in her voice. "Just an expression of inspiration. Maybe you can find some resonance in it." Ethan smiles enigmatically, a meaningful look in his eyes. That's when I decided to stop being silent. I walked over to Ethan and looked him straight in the eye. "Ethan, we know what you're doing, and we know who you really are. You better keep your distance, or everything will come to light." Ethan looked a little surprised, but quickly regained his composure with a sneer on his face. "Steve, you really have a vivid imagination. But no matter what you say, it doesn't change the facts. You guys have no idea what you're dealing with." Amelia glanced at me nervously, and I could feel her hands shaking slightly. In this moment, I knew there was no turning back. We had to go all out to uncover Ethan's true colors and protect our future. Back home, Amelia seemed unusually silent. She sat by the window, gazing at the distant night sky, as if her entire being had lost its way. "Amelia, we can't delay this any longer. Ethan's plot is becoming more and more obvious, and we have to take action." I held her hand tenderly, trying to make her feel safe. "Steve, I feel lost and scared. I really don't know what to do." Her voice was full of helplessness and exhaustion, tears glistening in her eyes. "Don't worry, we'll face this together," I said firmly. "We'll find more evidence and expose his plans. As long as we stick together, nothing can defeat us." That's when John's call broke the silence. He told me that he had found some new clues that corroborated with the evidence we had. I took a deep breath, feeling like things were finally getting somewhere. "Amelia, we need to go see John. He has some new leads that could be the key to us uncovering Ethan's plot," I said to her. "Okay, Steve, I'll go with you." Amelia forced a small smile, a glimmer of hope in her eyes. We arrive at John's place, and he has everything ready. He shows us some new documents and recordings that prove that Ethan has close ties to some underground organization and that Amelia is just a pawn in his plan. This evidence is enough to prove Ethan's conspiracy, but we need stronger evidence to expose him completely," John said, with a touch of urgency in his tone. "So what do we do?" Amelia asked anxiously, uneasiness in her eyes. "We need to get Ethan to expose himself, to get him to voluntarily reveal his true colors." John stated his plan. It was decided that a trap would be set to draw out Ethan's true colors at an upcoming major art show. That night, the three of us discussed every detail of our plan in detail, striving to do everything right. Although the road ahead was still full of unknowns and dangers, we shared the same belief and goal, which was to uncover Ethan's plot and protect our home. On this night, Amelia and I sat back to back on the couch, and despite the darkness of the night, we remained steadfast in our belief that the light of the future was not far ahead. As long as we work together, nothing can break us. The story will continue to unfold, and our plan will step closer to the truth. And that ultimate showdown will be a crucial point in our destiny. We must find our own peace and victory in the coming storm. As the date of the art show approached, our plan took shape. In order to lead Ethan into a trap, we decided to provoke him into alertness and action by utilizing information that he would not be able to ignore. I contacted a few influential friends in the art world and fictionalized an exhibition of Amelia's new work with the intention of catching Ethan's attention. Finally, the day of the art show arrived. It was a beautiful day in Los Angeles, and the sun was shining through the skyscrapers on the streets of Beverly Hills, bringing a warm glow of energy to the city. Amelia looked nervous, her eyes drifting away from time to time, as if she was looking forward to something or afraid of something. "Amelia, relax. We're going to make it." I hugged her, trying to ease her nerves. "I know. I'm just worried about accidents." She took a deep breath and tightened her grip on my hand. We took the car to the exhibition site, which was already full of art world celebrities and well-known personalities. The showroom was beautifully decorated and had an elegant atmosphere, and Ethan showed up with his usual confident smile, but I could feel his inner guard. When we entered the exhibit hall, John had already set everything up. He and a few of his colleagues had quietly set up camera equipment to ensure that everything would be recorded at the critical moment. The three of us split up, pretending to be busy with the preparations for the exhibition and the reception, but actually waiting for that critical moment to arrive. At the climax of the exhibition, we announced a special unveiling of the work. This was a trap we set to lure Ethan into revealing his true intentions and identity. As the unveiling ceremony began, the lights dimmed and the room went silent. A curtain slowly rose from the center of the stage, revealing the outline of a new work. It was a new work by Amelia, profound and powerful, symbolizing the search for freedom and self-worth. Ethan stood in the crowd, his gaze captivated by the painting, his eyes glittering with complex emotions. Just then, I quietly nodded to John, signaling him to prepare for action. "Ladies and gentlemen, thank you for coming." I cleared my throat and said through the microphone, "In this moment, I would like to reveal some truths about what lies behind this painting." The inspiration for its creation was not a mere artistic pursuit, but originated from a figure intent on manipulating and controlling artistic freedom. The room erupted. All eyes focused on me, and the painting, Ethan's face instantly turned somber. He clearly felt threatened. "Exactly who it is now needs to be witnessed by everyone." I continued, "Please take a look at the video evidence we have prepared." As my words fell, the giant screen began to play the images we had secretly recorded from Ethan's studio in the location of the transaction. The images clearly showed Ethan's dealings with the unsub and all the plots he had hatched. Ethan appeared panicked, and he immediately attempted to leave the showroom, but John and his co-workers were already prepared to cordon off the scene. Shortly afterward, the police arrived and took Ethan under control. In the face of solid evidence, he could no longer argue. With Ethan taken away by the police, we finally breathed a sigh of relief. The art show went on, while our mood was long filled with another emotion: the joy of regaining our freedom and safety. "Steve, we did it," Amelia said excitedly, her eyes filled with gratitude and hope. We hugged each other tightly as if we had been on a long and arduous journey. "Yes, Amelia, we've faced everything together, and we're finally making a new start," I whispered, feeling incredibly relieved and content. Over the next few days, we gradually regained the peace of mind that we had in the past. Despite all the ups and downs, our relationship has grown stronger. Amelia has returned to her passion for art, and I have found new motivation in my work. We have learned how to communicate and understand each other better, and to cherish every day we spend together. Although there will still be challenges and ups and downs in life, we firmly believe that as long as we love and support each other, we can overcome all difficulties. A few weeks later, Amelia had her solo art exhibition. It was a moment of passion and hope, and the whole exhibition hall was filled with warmth and freedom. Her work was widely acclaimed, not only showcasing her artistic talent, but also conveying her deep thoughts on life and self-worth. "Steve, thank you for your continued support and trust." After the opening ceremony, Amelia hugged me with tears of gratitude in her eyes. "That's what I should do, Amelia. As long as you're happy, I'd do anything for you," I responded fondly. We stand in the light as if everything has passed and the future is waiting to be created and written. Our story is not over. It has even just begun. We have to keep going, meet every challenge and opportunity in our lives, and embrace a new chapter that belongs to us together. The story ends with love and trust, and after going through storms and trials, we find our original emotions and hopes. No matter how the future changes, we will hold hands and move towards a better tomorrow. Thank you for taking the time to listen to today's story. If you enjoyed it, please like and subscribe if you haven't already. If you have a story to share about your own or someone else's experience, please feel free to contact me. Take care.